What is happening, guys, and welcome back to the channel. First things first, smash a like on the video and subscribe if you're new. And the Euros finally concluded. Attention turns back to domestic matters with a lot of pre-seasons kicking off soon. And George, Chelsea's pre-season kicks off this Saturday. There's been a lot of talk about the incomings at Stamford Bridge. Is Erling Haaland going to turn up or not? But there's a lot of players that Chelsea do need to move on to try and raise some funds also. So we're just gonna run through a few today. I just want to get your thoughts on whether we should keep them or sell them. Okay, let's kick things off with Ross Barkley. Now, signed when Antonio Conte was in charge, I think £15 million back in the January window, I think of 2017. Bit of a stop-start career. He's had a few moments. It went on loan to Aston Villa last season, started quite brightly, but kind of faded away. Where do you sit with Ross Barkley? Time to move him on?
Ross Barkley's a bit of a more difficult one than the other ones that we're going to come on to. For me, he's what I like to categorise as a luxury player. Someone who, when they've got space to do what they want to do and exploit attacking areas and have the freedom to do so, they can thrive under that. But I think when you're asking him to do the more mature duties that maybe more experienced players have in their capabilities, he's just not up to it, and I think he's a bit of a liability at Chelsea. I think Thomas Tuchel will certainly give every player an opportunity to have a go in pre-season, and maybe it'll be a case of they're not sold on until very late in the window. But I think for Ross Barkley, his time has probably come to an end at Stamford Bridge. I just don't think he's developed his career, and I don't think at Chelsea, despite some moments of brilliance, I don't think he's done enough to warrant being in Thomas Tuchel's plans for me.
Yeah, I think I'd have to agree, mate. I think he's one of those that, a lot of promise when he was younger, but from his sort of late teens, early 20s, he hasn't improved at all to where he is now. And for a big club like Chelsea, I just don't think he cuts it. He just isn't quite good enough. So if we can get some money for him, then I think we have to take it and move him on. But coming on next, George, sticking in that midfield area, someone that we've discussed a lot, and a lot of Chelsea fans really want to see him do well. Ruben Loftus-Cheek, a disappointing loan spell at Fulham last season, didn't really do a lot, struggled to get in the starting lineup each week for a side that ultimately got relegated. Tuchel will obviously look at him. Do you think there's a place in the squad for him for this coming season?
Yeah, I think there's a bit more sympathy and a bit more leeway when it comes to Loftus-Cheek, because we all want him to do so well, because he's Chelsea through and through, and there's just something different about him as a midfielder, and we saw glimpses of it under Maurizio Sarri when he was before he had that unfortunate injury, and we were expecting him to do a bit more at Fulham, and the fact that he couldn't get into the starting team of a side that ultimately got relegated is quite worrying. But I think what gives him the advantage over Barkley is probably age for one thing, but I also think he's just a bit more. I think he offers something a bit different in the midfield, and maybe it's a sympathy kind of thing with me, where I would give him another chance. So for me, he's not on the sell list. Potentially another loan move could be in question, but I just want to see him do well at Chelsea. So again, you've got to put a time limit on how much time you give him. But for me, he's one that stays in the squad.
Yeah, I think I'd have to agree. Like, if obviously he's 25 years of age now, he's probably harbouring aspirations to try and get back into the England squad again eventually. Obviously, as part of the World Cup squad in 2018, he needs to be playing regular football for that. So I think it's a decision that he's going to have to make for his career. I think there'd definitely be a space in the squad for him, providing Thomas Tuchel kind of likes what he sees. I think from a club perspective, it makes no sense when you've got someone like Loftus-Cheek to go and, if he's happy to stay and be a squad player, why go and spend 30, 40 million pounds to bring someone in when we've already got someone that can do a squad role? But if he wants to move on for the sake of his career, then I don't think we can have any complaints about that. He's had a good crack at Chelsea. He's 25 now. For Loftus-Cheek, I think it's now or never for him at Chelsea. He either stays this season, or I think it's done. But George, staying in that midfield, one last on the midfield, another player who we've not seen a lot of since he arrived is Bakayoko. He spent a lot of time on loan in Italy recently at AC Milan and Napoli. Do you think that there's any future for him? I mean, a lot of reports saying that he's going to permanently move to Serie A. Do you think there's any chance of him reigniting his Chelsea career?
I don't know, because we haven't seen enough of him at all. It's almost like he arrived and then we just didn't see him again. So again, it's like you said, it's whether we kind of keep him for the sake of not buying another player in a similar position to cover someone like a Kante, but and rather than forking out 40+ million for a player, just holding on to him. But again, I don't know how long he's been at Chelsea now, at least a couple of years, and we've seen literally a handful of appearances. So I can't see a future in him at Chelsea. I can't really justify him staying. Really.
Yeah, no, I would agree. And George, moving on to the defenders now, briefly, we'll just fire through a couple. Marcos Alonso, keep or sell?
Oh, we were just going through this, weren't we? It's like a toss-up between him and Emerson, because again, the age and whether we probably need another player in that area. I keep him personally. I haven't had much time to think about it, but I think from what I've seen from Alonso in the games that he does well, I think certainly when he played some important roles in some of those matches last season, particularly when we had the 5. So yeah, I think I'd just about keep him.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that. I think going forwards, and if we're sticking with the 5 going into next season, which I see no reason not to, then he is a valuable asset. I don't think Chilwell obviously will pick up suspensions, probably injuries. I mean, we're going to go deep into a lot of competitions. We're going to be playing 60+ games. So we are going to need Alonso to step in. I think he offers more than Emerson in that back 5, who we're going to come on to next. Obviously, he's done well with Italy recently, just winning the European Championships. Do you think of the two, if one's got to go, it's going to be more likely to be him?
Yeah, I think it answers the question. If you're going to keep Alonso and you've already got Ben Chilwell, there's no room for Emerson really. And I think he could do very well elsewhere. He's got age on his side, and we saw what he can do in stepping up when he was replacing that left back role for Italy. So I've got no doubts of his ability. But again, sometimes moves just don't work. And again, I can't. If you've got the two side by side on a bit of paper, I can't justify keeping Emerson when I haven't seen enough of him in a Chelsea shirt. So for me, it's Alonso stay and Emerson sell.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Right, George, last few, we're going to rattle a few in the attacking areas. Another player who's come through the ranks at Chelsea, who's been linked with move away to Bayern Munich several times in the past, Callum Hudson-Odoi. It's an interesting one. I think it's one that splits Chelsea fans. Again, want to see him do well because he's come through the ranks. But again, he's struggled to hold down a consistent place in the side. He seemed to be a favourite when Tuchel first came in that right wing-back role. Then he dropped out the side and has struggled really to get back in. Obviously, I think Chelsea would like to keep him, but if there was an opportunity to sell him to raise funds to bring in, say, Erling Haaland, do you think that's something the club would look at?
Well, just before you answer that question, I said keep, but like you said, if you're going to then put the question of we sell him, but we get a more high-profile player in, as an Erling Haaland, for example, I think you've got to sell to get that move over the line. But that is the condition for me. I think if it's just a case of just funds or just getting rid of him and not bringing anyone in, I think he stays. I think he's got so much talent, and he's one of the players that I would dread to think you look back and being another classic where Chelsea let him go like a De Bruyne or someone like of that caliber. I think he really has got the potential to be so good for Chelsea. But if Dortmund say if we need the funds to get Haaland in and he's the only one surplus to requirements, so I probably do have to do it.
Yeah, I think look, he's got age on his side. He's a young boy. I think early 20s, just a lot of ability, no doubt. I think he's definitely a very useful squad player. Can fill in at that right wing back role. Can also play further up the pitch. Missing out on Hakimi, I don't think we'll probably go in for another right-sided defender. So I think there's definitely a place in the squad for him. George, last couple then. Hakim Ziyech. I know he only recently arrived. It's not quite happened for him. I think he definitely deserves another chance. But similarly, if we need to raise funds to bring Erling Haaland in, then I think he's another one that Chelsea fans would probably say on that condition, they'd be happy to see him go.
Yeah, I've got to say, again, I'd rather him go than Hudson-Odoi, and actually, he's pretty much got a red flag by his name to say you've pretty much got 6 months to save your place at Chelsea. I think he had a pretty shocking season. The highlight was probably the goal against
It's Atletico Madrid, second leg.
Atletico Madrid, that's right. Yeah. And other than that, mate, I didn't rate him at all. I didn't see anything of real quality to suggest that he can start for Chelsea going forward if we're going to progress to be title challengers. So for me, I think benefit of the doubt maybe, and give him another 6 months to settle in. But again, if we needed to raise the funds, he'd be on my list to kind of as a player swap deal.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that, mate. I think swap deal or we need to raise funds, then no problem with him being moved on. Ultimately, if we don't need to raise the funds or the Haaland deal falls through, then I think I'll be happy to see him stay for another chance. And George, finally, that centre forward area, Tammy Abraham, links £40 million, the likes of Aston Villa and West Ham looking interested. Obviously, with Olivier Giroud having moved on to AC Milan, and that's going to be confirmed in the coming days. €1 million plus 1 million in kind of bonuses, add-ons, etc. That leaves Chelsea with Tammy Abraham and Timo Werner as the centre forwards. Even if Erling Haaland was to come in, do you think that Abraham should stay, or ultimately do you think he'll end up being sold?
I mean, what I want and what Chelsea do are probably two different things. For me, he stays because I still think he scores enough goals. I still think he can do a job for Chelsea. I'm not saying he should start for Chelsea. The benefit of Giroud going is that Chelsea are definitely going to sign a striker this summer. Whether we get the striker that we want, which is obviously Erling Haaland, or whether we go for another style of striker, it remains to be seen. But for me, I don't think you can sell him just yet because it leaves us very, very short with not long to go until the season starts. And we've got pre-season, mate. We've got I think a game behind closed doors against, I want to say Peterborough coming up. So I think he stays until we get someone over the line. And then it's a question of, what does he want? Does he want to play first team football? Because I'm sure he can do that elsewhere in the Premier League. I have no doubt.
Yeah, no, I think, again, it's another circumstances one. If no one else were to come in, I think ultimately we'll sign a centre forward. But if it was to not be a top bracket like Haaland, if it was to be someone of slightly less quality, I think there probably is a space for Abraham in the squad. But ultimately, I think if Erling Haaland arrives and with the attacking options we've got, for the sake of Abraham's career, he's not going to see many minutes at Chelsea if that happens. So it's probably best for him to move on. And for sort of £40 million, I don't think we could really be in a position to say no to that. But yeah, that's just my thoughts and George's on the outgoings at Chelsea, who we think should stay and go. It'll be interesting to see what happens in the coming weeks with the transfer activity. Hopefully it'll start to heat up a little bit. But as always, leave your thoughts in the comments below. Smash like on the video and subscribe to the channel, and we'll catch you in the next one.